Check.
Okay. But you should say it.
1 2 1 2. This is just a check.
Ditto, ditto.
Good. Maybe you're going to be doing
Say something.
doing some preaching. Plan on walking around tonight.
Ready?
We could all scoot down. Give Chase more room.
I was gonna come sit by you. I'm fine.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to thank everyone for participating tonight, either in person and online, and welcome everyone here. I will call to order the special meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission at 6:05 p.m. This evening, we are going, roll call, sorry. Oh, can we start with roll call first?
Faith Harbor present.
Ken Marincic, present.
Holly Roberts present.
Blake Greenhall present.
Chris Lasenick present.
Okay, so this evening we are starting our process of going through the planning and zoning regulations, hopefully for a final draft. I would like to start off with our time frame for this evening. If everyone's good with it, I'm thinking that if we put a cap on shoot for be done by 8 tonight. And then if it goes a little bit over, we can, but that'll kind of be our time frame. Is everybody in agreement with that?
Since it said 9 o'clock on the deal, I think we probably ought to go to that.
Go till 9?
I don't particularly want to, but that's what it said on the advertisement, so.
Right.
What is
We'll see where we're at.
okay.
No later.
No hard out.
Yes,
Just no later than 9.
no later than 9.
Hard out at 9.
Yes, definitely. All right, so our process is that we're going to start off with chapter 2, the zoning districts. But I would like to propose to my fellow board members that if there is a question in regards to any of the definitions as they pertain, could we go back and re-reference the definitions if there are any questions on those?
Yes.
It's like kind of how we did it before.
I think we do that. Yeah, basically throughout all the chapters, we're always kind of making notes about what we need to go back to and revisit in the definition.
Perfect. Yeah, sorry. I'm new to this process, so I'm just making sure that I'm on board with everything. So, all right, so we will go through line item by line item and just discuss each, give the commissioners an opportunity to discuss it, and then do we open each line item to public comment?
Whatever you think.
Last time it was.
I can hear you.
Can you,
Oh, I don't know. Can you guys hear Blake?
can you hear me talk?
Upside down.
The shirt folds the wrong way, or this, I'm not smarter than this thing. Last time we kind of went through a whole page and then
Okay,
our A section, you know,
yeah.
and then have the public talk.
That sounds, like I said, any,
Madam Chair, would you mind if I make a comment, just an overarching comment to begin with?
Too.
So I just wanted to say, there was a few people that sent in comments today, and I just want to say thanks for that. We love public comment. I think Mr. DeWitt was one of them. I guess I just wanted to say a couple of thoughts on that. One is, I think largely what I heard in there was a lot of stuff that I think reflects back to the comprehensive plan. A lot of the values expressed in there. So I think that's a good thing. I thought that was good. There was alignment with our comprehensive plan there. I think that, I just want to be clear what we are doing here with the regulation revision is creating a document that helps us enforce the comprehensive plan. So the vision and the policies are laid out in the comprehensive plan. The document that we're doing is meant to effectuate, is the term, I think, in the state statutes, the comprehensive plan. So I just want to point out that, that is our vision kind of policy document. What we're doing now is to enforce that. And I think just, in the 3 comments we received today, one of the overarching themes was less regs, right? And that's one of the actual policies, or actually it's not a policy, it's part of the vision statement about excess regulations, that we don't want to have excess regulations. So I think that that's, a sentiment that we need to conform with. I think, I agree with that myself. I think, what gets tricky in these situations is what is excess, right? I think what are the circumstances? What's the underlying kind of ground or landscape in order to define what's necessary in order to properly and effectively enforce the comprehensive plan. And I would just say that, I think we don't want to, over-regulation causes problems. It causes bottlenecks. It can be bad. Deregulation entirely, I think, takes the, power out of our being the Sublette County citizens and residents' hands and puts it into market forces, outside interests. Other people dictate what we are if we don't do it ourselves. So I guess I just wanted to say, one, thanks. Two, just kind of draw some of those comments to the comprehensive plan and say what we're doing, and offer some thoughts about, it's tough to strike the right balance. We'll do our best, but appreciate the comments, and more welcome. Thank you.
thank you very much. All right, so let's dive into this. We'll go ahead and tackle the first page then. So section 1, zoning districts. The zoning districts established by this resolution for the unincorporated areas of Sublette County are designated as follows. Agriculture, A1. This district maintains and continues the existing agriculture use in the county. Residential, R. This district provides land for residential development within an area of 1 mile from the corporate limits of an incorporated towns. Rural residential, RR. This district provides areas in the rural portions of the county for residential development and uses. Rural residential 5, RR5. This district provides areas in the rural portions of the county for residential development and uses. A 5-acre minimum parcel is required. Rural residential 10, RR10. This district provides areas in the rural portions of the county for residential development and uses. A 10-acre minimum parcel is required. Rural residential 20, RR20. This district provides areas in the rural portions of the county for residential development and uses. A 20-acre minimum parcel is required. Residential mobile home, RMH. This district provides land for residential and/or mobile home development within an area of 1 mile from the corporate limits of an incorporated town. Rural Residential Mobile Home, RRMH. This district provides in the rural portions of the county for residential and/or mobile home development and uses. Rural Residential Mobile Home 5, RRMH5. This district provides areas in the rural portions of the county for residential and/or mobile home development and uses. A 5-acre minimum parcel is required. Rural Residential Mobile Home 10, RRMH10. This district provides areas in the rural portions of the county for residential and/or mobile home development and uses. A 10-acre minimum parcel is required. Rural Residential Mobile Home 20, RRMH20. This district provides areas in the rural portions of the county for residential and/or mobile home development and uses. A 20-acre minimum parcel is required. Mobile Manufactured Home Park, MH. This district provides areas where mobile and manufactured homes can be developed. Multiple Family Residential, MFR. This district provides areas for structures designed for occupancy by 2 or more families, with each family occupying a separate dwelling unit that may be separated vertically or horizontally. Shared walls, entrances, or stairs are common features of this type of housing. With public water and sewer, minimum lot size shall be 1 acre and maximum density shall be 8 dwelling units per acre. With a septic system and a well, minimum lot size is 5 acres and maximum density is 2 dwellings per unit. Is there any questions or comments from the commissioners on this first page?
Are we gonna consider the drafts for that?
Good for you, girl. Good for you.
What are we hearing? Oh, somebody online.
both sizes in that, or where it would allow for multiple size lots, and you would hash that out in the rezoning process?
Precisely, yes, because that is already happening, just as you said. So you can have RR5 and you can build something bigger. You just can't do anything smaller in that space.
Right.
And then for discussion's sake, you then, if you're doing a minor subdivision or whatever it may be, there could be it's a different analysis. So for example, right now, and this comes from the perspective of convenience for a person in this community that wants to do something. For discussion's sake, right now, if you have a 15-acre lot that is eligible to be divided in a minor subdivision. Right now, in order to do that, you would have to not only seek for a minor subdivision, but you would also have to do a zone change because it inherently moves it from RR10 to RR5.
Right. That just happened with the Smiths and Bonneret, right?
And so it's like another step of analysis. It's additional hurdle for people to jump in that space.
Right.
Now, of course, it does provide the county the ability to limit that if it is in a space where the county feels as though having a lot of that size would be inappropriate. I don't know, just a suggestion.
Which I didn't see who all's on Zoom, but it would be someone that is a developer. It would be nice to know their opinion if they thought it would be easier for them in development stage than or more complicated than having a set thing. So that's my only thing. But
I think that's a great idea.
But I mean, I agree with you that they are all three the same thing.
Yeah, I feel like that requires, thanks for the suggestion, Clayton. I'd like to think that through about what the pros and cons of that are, but.
Well, the biggest con is, or not con, but I mean, for that, I would think the public would have an issue with is, in that first stage, it'd be really, without already having your plat and knowing what lot size everything is, what are you getting? You know what I mean? What is that envision when you're not saying this is all this size? So I agree with Chris. It is a great suggestion, but
I think that we still have the ability before approving the subdivision, though, to make a determination on what size lots are going to be allowed.
What's it mean though when there's a conflict between, like right now there are HOAs and service improvement districts that line up with those RR10, RR5, and it's in their covenants. We get rid of RR, other those designations, and we group it all under one. The county says, we don't care about your HOA, your covenants. We're not enforcing those. And someone comes and says, great, I want to rezone to 2 acres. And the county says, yes. I mean, it just seems like we're creating conflict between those where right now there's some clarity by virtue of the fact that there's alignment between the county standards and those HOA and service improvement district standards. You're going to keep walking back. You should just keep the microphone.
I'm just going to hold this thing.
hey, I tried to give it to you 5 minutes ago.
I know, but I didn't want it because I didn't want to talk. That's an interesting question, Chris. Because we have the underlying requirement that all lot sizes have to be 2 acres right now, unless they're in the specific. What's that? And that includes the tiny ones. Yeah, the multifamily is different. But yes, that requires a public system because we're talking about septic. So if we are in a situation where you're talking about Chris, where there would be a division inside of an already platted subdivision.
Right. Yes.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, Dennis. If we're going to do that, we have a vacation of a plat question. Except for Hoback Ranches, you're right. Because but Hoback Ranches does right now. They have a limit on that service improvement district has a limit on their size, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 10 acres.
So you're suggesting if they were to change that and say, never mind, we can do 2 acres.
I'm questioning. I don't know. I'm thinking out loud here. I don't know that I've got the right thought in mind. I guess I'm just wondering, do we create tension by getting rid of those where there's currently alignment between what's in those covenants, regardless of whether it's an HOA or service improvement district, and what the county is, as in their regulation, as in our regulations?
And I would kind of have to agree with that because we're setting that density, and for that density of that subdivision, it's already kind of been set up. If we looked at that as combining all of those uses, put RR 5, 10, and 20 together, the setbacks are basically pretty much the same throughout. The uses are the same throughout. You're using the designation, which I still think should be in there, to maximize your density. So you're stating 1 residential unit, as we define it, per 10 acres.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important. It's going to be hard to get rid of that if we want to maintain those different acreage sizes as our minimums or maximums in an area. But we could combine them and put them in one definition or one description.
I guess it begs the question if the county ever wanted to update its zoning map, which, by the way, I've never seen an actual zoning map for the county GIS obviously, but like original zoning map. Does such a map exist in our records?
It's hanging on the wall outside my office.
Okay, I'm gonna bring my phone and snapshot it then. I've never looked at it, but yeah, I was curious. I mean, if the county ever, because that does happen with, right? Counties do revisit zoning maps or no? Mm-hmm.
In 2015, 2023.
Right.
So in essence, GIS is the zoning map. Like there's no piece of paper map.
Yeah, that is the most up-to-date reference that we do have. And we do not have a map of proposed zoning district.
How were those original lot or zoning sizes decided? Whether it was going to be a RR 10 or a 20 or whatever. Yeah, do you know?
No idea.
4 to 5 people said so.
I wouldn't doubt, but
In the 80s, I just read a bunch of resolutions. It was in the 80s. There was a blanket zoning done in the county in 78. And then from there, the next 10 years, they started to create at that time pretty much what we have now. There's been some other ones that have been added, like resource conservation and family exemptions zone and things of that nature. And I think commercial and the industrial zones did come later in the 80s into the 90s, all by resolution. But the county was just blanketed zoned in 78 with ag.
Clayton wouldn't let share his microphone with you, huh?
So, but I guess when I was talking about zoning maps, I was thinking more future looking. I mean, counties do from time to time, especially after they would update, like a comprehensive plan might do like a let's redo the zoning map sort of thing. So I thought, I'm just thinking if we consolidated all of those, we would lose our tools at those different levels. If there were a zoning map, we would be giving up the 5, 10, and 20 designations. if that were the case.
You know, prefer that, or we prefer 2 acre here and so on. Is that what you're referring to? I mean, you could still do that and not label them. I mean, you could keep that. in-
Lot sizes.
Yeah, I mean, you could keep that in mind and designate and just have, you know, oblong shapes of like, this is what we're thinking for this rural size and so on and so forth.
That's true.
Thanks for getting us stuck on the first page, Clayton.
Leave it to the attorney. You said you brought that up before. I don't remember you ever bringing that up before.
Oh, yes, several times.
I didn't remember.
Any of the other boards?
I mean, generally, I'm all for crossing stuff out. So outside of that, I recognize some of the issues it may present for HOAs, but I guess the recourse for the HOA, if somebody tried to go against it, is that they can sue, right? So.
Yeah, I guess it's just cost benefit. I don't know. I don't see a tremendous amount of benefit. It seems like there's some risks, but
I have one quick question. After we get done hashing out page 1, 2, or 3, and we decide on what's going on, how's it going to be typed up and written and presented to us with their changes and stuff? How are we doing that?
You just volunteered.
No, I did not volunteer.
Computer, said you were savvy.
Oh, no, we haven't got to that point.
Ah,
Well, I don't want to spend 3 hours here doing stuff and it doesn't get anything accomplished in the long run is what I'm getting at.
I will.
You mean, let's go ahead, sorry. So you mean actually as in taking notes tonight?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, and all right.
I'm taking notes on my computer and my
Yeah.
pad too.
I was thinking you were talking about who was going to make the final document. I don't know.
I did too.
Well, that's all part of it, yeah, but yeah, so.
Okay, is there any other comments from the board for now before we open this first page up for public comment? Okay, is there any comments from anybody in the room on page 1 or no, page 17, the first page of chapter 2? Okay, is there anybody online that has any questions or comments? Looks like Dan. How are you today, sir?
Good. How are you, Holly?
Great, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, board, for your time. We were blocked out of the audio. I didn't hear what Clayton proposed on the zoning, but does it matter? Are we not doing that? I don't know where we're at on that. I didn't have a clear understanding.
So essentially, Mr. Milinkovich suggested that we could combine all of the RR designations since they have the same uses. And so it would just be one RR instead of the RR, the RR5, RR10, RR20.
I see.
And
And
so,
where did we end up with that? We're not doing that, or are we doing that?
well, I think we were still kind of open and discussing that.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Are there any developers that are online by any chance? Or anyone that would have some direct insight into how this would affect those that are trying to develop a subdivision.
I'll make a comment, just developer adjacent, that I understand how these things come about. You know, it puts things in nice, neat boxes where we have 5, 10, 20. I think that in many subdivisions, you know, you're looking at what fits the landscape, and it's not always nice and neat in that way. And sometimes it makes sense to have different lot sizes around different features throughout a piece of land. And I guess that's one benefit that I could see for new development. Again, recognizing the issues that it could bring up, especially with existing things. But as far as somebody bringing a project to us, being able to zone to rural residential, and then proposing their subdivision plan, and us being able to look at it objectively, like, yeah, this fits the landscape, rather than, oh, it's zoned RR10 and this is a 7 and this one's a 12 or whatever. Like, I think that it would offer more creativity and flexibility in that scenario.
I think that that's a great point. Definitely. And then, so then would it work whenever we approved a subdivision, and would we just give them the minimum size of lots? Am I thinking about this correctly?
Well, I think that you approve the plat, and that is what the plat is. And then, you know, in the future, if somebody were to want to do a lot line change or minor subdivision or whatever, that would depend on if that was allowed within the plat, or and obviously, you know, who's sitting on the boards at that time. So
Right. What do we think?
I'd like to
Alan?
think about it some more myself before. I'd prefer not to make a decision tonight if we could revisit this. But
Okay.
yeah, I'm fine with that.
I agree, just because it is such a big change.
And that, Clayton, would that essentially be the same through the mobile home RR?
But what I heard Clayton say, I thought you said RR5, RR10, RR20, but did you also mean to include other
Well, I
RRs?
was in the conversations that I've had, or when this has come up before, and I think I'd suggest that we just do it with the 5, 10, and 20, because the mobile home is different, as is is mobile home not different? It's just different in the size. It just includes mobile homes. Are they still 5s?
There's 5, 10, and 20 underneath so there's rural residential mobile home.
Sorry,
then-
I must be thinking. I'm sorry, I'm thinking of the other. I'm thinking of the
Multifamily.
tiny ones. Yeah.
There's residential mobile home, rural residential mobile home.
Well,
then-
and candidly, I think the more consolidation you have, my point was, if we can consolidate these, we limit those. Like they all could be consolidated under the same theory of efficiency.
Yeah.
If you so choose to go that route.
Bess, did you have a comment? You raised your hand.
So there's a couple examples in the county already. So Green River Ranches is an example. That's a subdivision, just has multiple blocks, right? Or phases, whatever you want to call them. The larger lots are in the front, and then the smaller lots are towards the back, right? So those are like R5, 10. I think there's even some smaller ones
There's
back there.
2.5.
Yeah.
Actually.
So that's an example of where different rural residential zones were done in a subdivision. They were just, I believe, done in phases. Dennis can tell me if I'm wrong. And Barger, to the mobile home aspect, which is just my personal opinion, subdivision has some different lot sizes, and then sprinkled throughout those different blocks are like RR5MH, right? So you can have a mobile home there in the middle of your other single family residential development, right? Does that make sense? We also have a mobile home zoning for like an actual park, a mobile home park zoning. I mean, I would propose that we create mobile home parks instead of create mobile home zoned parcels sprinkled throughout our rural residential zones. You know what I'm saying?
I could be wrong, but I believe in Barger, Block 8 is the only one that allows mobile homes, which means that they're not on a permanent foundation. Throughout the rest of the subdivision, I think that it's acceptable to have manufactured homes, but they have to be on a foundation. Maybe Big Country Ranches allows mobile homes too.
Big Country Ranches, all of those down through there, they all have that MH zoning.
Yeah.
As a residential living unit, you are allowed a mobile home. So it's also a building, whether or not they are or are not on a foundation. The type of building, basically no eave overhang, the structure itself. So it just gives those lots a full realm of what they can put on there.
Sure.
But there's a majority of those lots out there. They're all zoned MH.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna opt to revisit the RR, and I would suggest that if anyone knows of a contractor that could give us some good insight on this, that would definitely be helpful. Okay, if no one has anything else, we'll move on to page 2 or the next page in chapter 2.
You want just divvy up the duty of reading pages?
Sure, that'd be great. You want to go first?
I can.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
All right. General commercial, C1, this district provides areas that are primarily retail and service business in character with related hotel, office, cultural, institutional, and public uses, and provides for orderly and compact commercial storefront development. Highway commercial, CH1, this district provides for highway-related commercial development. These areas are primarily related to the service industry. Is that supposed to say restaurant?
I hope so.
Restraint.
Yes.
Restaurant, hotel, motel, office, retail, or wholesale-related businesses and public uses. Recreational service, RS1, this district provides areas for recreation-oriented services and uses generally incidental to natural amenities. Light industrial, IL, this district provides for a range of non-hazardous light manufacturing, processing, wholesaling, distributing, and similar uses, including associated administrative and office uses. Heavy industrial, IH, this district provides areas for general industrial manufacturing, processing, wholesaling, distributing, and similar uses. This district shall be at least 1 mile away from existing dwelling units that are not owned by the owner of the heavy industrial district. Resource conservation, RC, this district protects and conserves environmentally sensitive areas where development must be limited to prevent degradation of the areas. Scenic areas, historic sites, and trails, SA, this district protects and conserves important natural and scenic areas, historic sites, and trails. Rural mixed, RM. This district provides for a mixture of uses that are compatible with the residential and commercial uses of the district and adjoining property owners. Planned unit development, PUD. This district is an overlay district that provides a flexible procedure for tracts of land that are to be planned and developed as a whole using a unified design, encouraging creative methods and allowing a mixture of uses. family exemption. FE, the FE suffix following any zoning district designation denotes that a lot within that zoning district was created by means of family division. That's some nice alliteration in there. Do we want to start section 2? Do that. Okay.
You think?
Yeah.
If
I think let's,
finish all of section 1.
yep. On any of the rest of these in section 1.
I would like to propose that we get rid of rural mixed as a zoning district because I think it's just a hodgepodge of things that kind of violate the premise of zoning districts personally.
Do you have an example of rural mix, Dennis? Trying to think.
We've done
Yeah.
a couple since we've been on.
We haven't necessarily rezoned anything rural mixed as of late, but Gopher Ridge subdivision stuff down next to Big Piney. With home businesses, home development, everything that is kind of going on within the county, I think this is a very underutilized zoning district, and I think it would provide for residential use and commercial use. Those people operating trucking companies, private, where they own and operate their own trucks, or small businesses, that they would have their owner operated type businesses, within, they have a place to live, so it's residential, but they have commercial. We have all of the similar uses to agriculture in those veterinary clinics, stuff like that. And we do have a couple of the vets that are described or in rural mixed zoning district. Honestly, I think this is a very underutilized zoning district within the county, and it could provide opportunity for people to have residences and their business at their residence.
I recall at one point, Dennis, you saying at a meeting before the meeting started, I hate the rural mixed zoning district. Does that ring any bells? I mean, did you change your stance on it, or am I misremembering? Do you think you never said that?
I don't know if I did or not, but as you look at that and as you look to what the people in Sublette County are doing, and they have to own, or they do own a 10-acre piece of property that all they are allowed to have on is their residential, living space, and they have to go buy a piece of light industrial to operate their business off of. As you read more into this and do more research on that type of use throughout the country, I think it makes more sense, and I believe it's underutilized.
I personally think that we should leave it, especially as a business owner. I think that this is something that could definitely be utilized more. And I think it is important to have a designation such as this.
I also think that there's, we would ultimately have the discretion in where those things show up. And I mean, I'm thinking of just commercial or even light industrial areas in different places I've been where, you've got somebody that has like whatever they're doing, some sort of, maybe a welding shop or something, and they have an apartment, and, it offers a lot of flexibility, and those things wouldn't show up in a subdivision, obviously, that doesn't allow it. It would be, I'm thinking like even Daniel Junction or something like that, where they've got the RV stuff, you've got the restaurant and the gas station, and then there's a body shop, and then there's houses behind it. And I do think that there could be some cool creative uses for it. I also, I'd maybe be a little concerned if one popped up right next door, but I'm in a subdivision. I'm not terribly worried about that.
All right, let it go on record. Chris Lisenik wanted to delete something from the regulations, and Chase Harbor wants to keep it.
Yeah. We could
You heard
delete the
that
whole,
right? Oh,
the whole
Roy's not even
page.
here.
No, I rescind my comments. I want to get rid of it. I agree with Chris.
Yeah, well, I guess, if we were thinking, I mean, one of the other things that I wanted to talk about or propose was putting something here that explicitly disallows split zoning. Maybe I think the fact that we have both of those things, they worry me for the same reasons, but I wonder what folks think about that. If we keep rural mixed or mixed rural, and what do you think about the split zoning designation? Because split zoning to me just seems like a way to sidestep the regulations personally.
At times, it seems like that. There are times it seems appropriate, but maybe the right step for those people would be to come and ask to rezone to rural mix so that they had the ability to do those two things instead of a split zoning.
And we just saw with Kemp, I mean, he even told us he did the split zoning so that he could avoid the more onerous process and diligence of the subdivision. So, I mean, he admittedly was using it to sidestep the regulations.
But on that, it would have made, if he would have came and asked to rezone to rural mixed and you had the idea of what he was trying to do, it would be.
Would that have worked? I don't know.
Well, I don't know if
rural mixed would allow that.
I don't think you can have a trailer park in rural mix.
I think also with like split zoning, you have the ability to kind of determine where the uses are being placed on a parcel of land. In rural or mixed, I don't know if you have that ability.
I think you can do whatever you want on rural mixed as far as placement, can't you? I mean,
that would be my understanding. Which again, I'm probably for. So if we were going to get rid of split zoning because of that, because of this option, then I would support that.
It doesn't mention you will not find that word in our regulations.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
How does that reconcile with the subdivision that was rezoned across from the junction that had multiple zones? And the junction also has multiple zones, but that was a long time ago. The one across from the junction is more recent, and it has light industrial, highway commercial, ag, and multifamily residential. So I think it just provides for a variety of different uses, if appropriate, deemed by all of you and elsewhere, if that's an appropriate use of that parcel that the applicant is proposing.
That not also just like a sort of a mechanism for future planning, kind of what Chris was talking about with the zoning overlay. I mean, I get where on like a 5-acre lot or something that somebody isn't planning on developing and just split zoning it so they can do one thing on one side and something else on the other may be problematic. But on something like that, where it's a larger parcel, and I'm assuming that their plans include future development that will include subdividing commercial lots, light industrial lots, and multifamily lots that are designated by that overlay at this point.
And that in that particular subdivision, that was what was shown on the proposed subdivision plat when that was rezoned. The subdivision plat itself has just not went forward as of yet.
Right.
So those were the different zoning districts of how they were going to break up the property and break up their lots.
Yeah.
And I think what we're looking at or bringing up the discussion of here is multiple zoning districts on one lot that is not broke up.
right?
At minimum, it seems to me that if it's a tool that gets used, we should have it in our regulations, define what it is, when, where, and how it can be used. I mean, it seems a little bit odd that it gets used, but we don't even have a mention of it.
No, just the people online are saying they can't hear you.
Yeah, you should speak into the microphone.
So I like the rural mixed, and I understand Chris's point on the split zoning, and maybe the answer is that we come up with a definition and a way we want to address split zoning in regards to where it is all on one lot that's not split up the way the Daniel Junction was.
So another point of topic is under heavy industrial. In red, this district shall be at least 1 mile away from existing dwelling units that are not owned by the owner of the heavy industrial district. So it is in the comments that we would request input from Whiskey Rock. I can't talk today. Regarding what distance is reasonable here.
Yeah, the night that he presented to us, I asked him that question and he said he concurred that 1 mile was reasonable.
So is everybody good with leaving that as is?
Was that something that we
Added.
put in instead of redlining out or something? I don't understand why it was red there instead of
That,
blue.
yeah, I mean, if you, in our clean version, that text is in there. That was something that we added. But we made a comment and just said we wanted further input on it.
Okay.
I mean, just
1 mile.
there's got to be, I don't know, 15 houses within a mile of the industrial park. I'm probably within a mile of it, and I don't even know it's there. I don't know. I don't know if I like that as a requirement.
Agree. I think that that's a little excessive.
To me, a mile seems a lot, and I honestly don't see us having anyone come and ask to make a lot more heavy industrial in the future. So plus, and then if someone does, so much other of the county has been developed, and it's going to be really limited where it can go with all the wildlife corridors and everything else. So I think the 1 mile could really make it almost impossible for anyone to ever add any more heavy industrial if it was needed.
Yeah, I'd rather just look at that at the time of application, I guess, where it is, rather than having that requirement on there.
So should we just strike that whole comment?
I mean, that would be my preference, but
A district or a limit.
For the record, I'll say I'm adamantly opposed to that. But I think that is one of the biggest concerns that we hear next to industrial. When people show up and have comments, they're concerned about noise and particulate and things that come from industrial sites. So I think where you draw the line is reasonable, or if you want to use a different mechanism, you want to talk about actual standards, sound, particulate matter, those things, but then that gets into a really complicated enforcement issue.
Right.
So I think that, our job is to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. And this seems like a pretty easy way to try to do that. So if you disagree that a mile is the right one, then okay, let's talk about what the right line is. But I think to strike it entirely would be extremely unfortunate.
And if I recollect right, we added it because a lot of people in the public wanted a definitive line.
Yeah, right. That was a common public comment. You may remember its biggest and strongest advocate, Tia Leo, was, I think, if I got that right, was that her name? Tia Leo. I think she was the one that consistently, but we heard this from lots of other people, and this has come up whenever we'd have applications related to that. Right, because we agreed that given that, when I remember we had lengthy conversation about this, when we looked at the specific uses, we decided to put that under heavy industrial, not light industrial.
Any further thoughts on that? Then do we want to put a smaller amount then? What are our thoughts?
Oh, I think before we decided, seeing that there's so many people with their hands raised up, that we listened to public comment and also from in the room.
Okay.
If that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's great. Sorry. Okay, is there any public comment in the room in regards to anything on this second portion of section 1? Oh,
Let's grab a microphone. Oh, it doesn't sound like it's on.
There we go.
You're good.
My name is Steve Christensen. As far as the heavy industrial and a mileage limit, perhaps I'd like to recommend that the county do a study to see if there are available areas for heavy industrial development that are not within a mile of a dwelling unit. I'd hate to see, you define this zone, but there's no place that you could ever locate this zone. So I think it would be helpful to understand, are there spots that could actually utilize this zone within the county?
that being said, go to comments online. Mr. Carter, would you like to go first, sir?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for allowing me to speak up. Just listening here, I have a question and a point. The question is, aren't we going to do an analysis and map out all of these various categories so people will know in advance where to put their interest, if it's going to be residential or industrial or whatever? And so that analysis that the previous speaker pointed up seems to me to be integral to this process. The point I want to try to make is that when we're talking about this residential zone and these others having no density criteria, our comprehensive plan talks about placing more concentrated developments adjacent to existing developments. And it would seem to me, given the wildlife emphasis that the county has, we should be planning higher densities near existing developments, lower densities as you move outward into the wildlife habitat. And I don't see that built in. I see the resource conservation category, but I don't know if that's mapped out or if it's going to be mapped out to include the wildlife corridors so that we have a regulatory mechanism so that we avoid things like the 40 Rod Road noise development, which, as Fish and Game said, is basically a barrier to wildlife, to the migration. And so we need to try to fit things around existing developments, existing wildlife corridors, and other features. And these categories just seem to me like you can come in before the Planning and Zoning Commission and just request anything, and then you guys just decide that day, okay, well, these neighbors counted on this being a 10-acre residential area, but we're going to put an industrial unit next to you. That's just too bad. And so I think we're putting ourselves in too much of an open-ended situation without any societal constraints. And, I don't want to live in a society that has no constraints. That's my point.
Great, thank you, sir. Any comments on that?
I mean, I have thoughts on related to some of his comments, but I feel like that'll take us away from what we were just talking about. So maybe I'll save them for later if that's okay.
Fantastic, thank you. All right, next up is JH.
Thanks. This is Joe Harrell. Can you guys hear me?
We having a hard time. Could you say something else? We had a hard time hearing that.
How about now? You guys hear me now?
Yep, we got you.
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. I just like to add regarding the 1 mile limit. I kind of follow along with what Chase and Mr. Christensen said. I support removing that limit and leaving it to the discretion of the board. Geography and like physical layout of different areas can make a big effect on whether or not something has an effect on the local neighboring properties. Like Chase, I live next to the industrial site, fairly close to it. I don't even notice it is there. There's a hill in the way. So without the study that Mr. Christensen talked about, I don't really see a need for limiting yourselves to something like that. A rezone request has public comment. If you have a lot next to you that somebody is wanting to change into light industrial or something like that, then you have the opportunity to make your concerns known at that point.
Great, thank you, Mr. Harrell.
Thanks.
Dan, would you like to go ahead, sir?
Thank you, Chairperson. I don't think it's a good idea unless, as Mr. Christensen stated, that we do a study of what would be impacted. If we leave it to the discretion of the board, they may decide that property rights of the individual that wants to rezone to heavy industrial outweighs those of the surrounding neighbors. We've seen that decision made multiple times in the last few years. In the area where I live, it's very rural and very quiet. So as I stated at the last planning and zoning meeting, that I could hear music 2.1 miles away, and that's nothing near as intrusive as heavy industrial noise that might be there. So though I made that point at the last P&Z meeting, the P&Z meeting still decided that it was appropriate to allow the CUP for the Deadshot Ranch. And even though I might have noise, but they're going to limit it from, I think, 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. And I'm going to have to accept that if that's approved. So it seemed like there's enough study to make that decision. And I don't think that all people's property rights would be respected if they were within a noise boundary. So I advocate sticking with what Whiskey Rock represented, or what the 1 mile, unless there's a better study done that says that it's not an issue. But I still think rezoning could create a issue. Thank you for allowing me to comment.
Thank you, sir. It looks like up next is PB. Miss Burrows, are you on, ma'am?
I think I am now.
Oh, there we gotcha.
Okay. I just have a couple of quick comments on this particular situation. Number one is that we're not talking about light industrial. We're talking about major heavy industrial involves large pieces of heavy equipment, such as oil field things like was out in the at one time out off of Paradise Road or Boulder area. These are not, we're not talking about little pieces of equipment or light industrial, some kind of a little business that's got some character or to it, I think. And that was the point when the original change was made, was that I know that it seems like a mile is a long ways, but when you think about it, most of these heavy industrial areas are going to be proposed or should be proposed far away from actual subdivisions or anything like that. So, and none of this is a retrograde. It's not going to change what's there at the moment. Or when the original stuff goes in, it's going forward. So I think that's the big deal here. And I think leaving it in is not going to harm anyone or anybody's subdivision or even their rural mix. It unless there is, as Mr. Christensen suggested, a study, then I think you have to leave it as being the better part of common sense. That's all. Thank you for allowing me to participate.
Thank you very much, ma'am. MC, you're up next.
Hi, this is Mike Crossan. I would just like to point out that I live about exactly a mile from the hospital being built. Well, the supposed hospital, I guess I'll say. And it's been less than pleasant living in this spot while that construction's going on. The banging, the clanging, the dirt, all the neat stuff that comes with industrial activity has really impacted our life here. And so I don't think a mile is at all unreasonable. And certainly the commissioners can take it up and reduce it or get rid of it or whatever they want. But I do think the public spoke pretty clearly at this election that they want change in planning and zoning. At the commissioner election, obviously some results came out that I think were directly related to people's frustration with planning and zoning. We want to live, in a peaceful, quiet place like Sublette County has historically been. And certainly there's places for industrial development. We have the industrial area, out towards the dumps. There's probably more room to add more out there, but it does need to be categorized in specific areas instead of left to the whims of, 3 commissioners who can basically ruin the lives of a lot of their constituents, before they can get them voted out. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crossan. Is there anyone else online that has any comments or questions? All right, with that being said, we will bring it back to the board.
So I do have a comment on that. I don't have any problem, of course, with a finding out, doing a study like Mr. Christensen said, but we can say we're going to do it. Now, what are we going to do? Are we going to hire a consulting firm to do that study? We can't just talk about it. If we're going to do it, we got to do it. We got to make a plan or something on it, I believe so.
Right. What does that look like?
I don't think a consultant is probably in the cards, but
Right.
With our budget of $0.
yeah. Well, and other, consultants have been used before, and we've seen what that cost. So anyway.
Yeah, I would. No, sorry, go ahead. You talk.
I was just going to comment that seeing nothing is being set in stone tonight, and the public and Mr. Christensen and everyone brought up great things, that I would recommend that we just leave it as we wrote it last time, and then do some due diligence. And if we wanted to come back to it later, we could.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
I just, I think I do agree with. I mean, calling it a study makes it sound big. I actually don't think it's that big of a. I mean, on the GIS, you can do the measurement tool and say what's a mile out from. It's not nothing, but it's not like tons of hours. It's probably, I don't know, a couple hours of work or something, I would imagine. But I think that's smart because, right, we could back ourselves into a corner with a limit that, it looks like the only place we can put heavy industrial is right in the middle of this migration corridor, right? I mean, nobody wants to do that. So I do think it would be wise to say, okay, help us get some data on what the line drawing exercise is. I mean, to Mr. Harrell's comments, I'll just say, Mr. Harrell, you mentioned in your letter today that you wanted to see, fair regulations that protected property rights. And I think, this is that in the sense that it doesn't leave it up to subjectivity that calls into questions why people are making certain decisions. If they seem inconsistent on their face, it creates a consistent rule that can be fairly applied and does protect the property rights of people that are impacted by having to be next to heavy industrial. The alternative might be moving a lot of the permitted or authorized uses that are most potentially harmful, chemical plants, gas processing plants, some manufacturing and storage of explosives to conditional uses, so that they do have to be considered in a very specific circumstance before they're allowed. That may be another way to handle it, so that you can say, well, we're going to leave it up to the circumstance and have it be judged based on. I mean, I hear Chase, I think you're saying you don't hear it too much, maybe because the topography of it doesn't allow you. Dan hears something 2 miles away. It does rely on the topography a lot. So I don't know. That's another way we could handle it if we wanted to not have a mile limit or whatever.
I also think that the way that it's written, I'm thinking of existing things. I believe the industrial park's been there longer than where I'm at, or probably where Joe's at. And we both chose to live there because we like what the properties offer. I could see where it would be problematic if you put that down next to an existing subdivision. So in that way, I understand the language. I'm just always hesitant to, if there was a site that made a lot of sense that was within, a mile, and we couldn't do it because we wrote it this way. But I also can see a situation where, it doesn't make sense. And, if we get rid of it and we ruin a bunch of people's, properties. So it's, it's tricky.
So my last comment on it is, that is only written in heavy industrial and not light industrial. And a ton of the approved uses in heavy industrial are allowed in light industrial. And most of the, where the things, Chris, that you were saying that we would turn into a CUP are actually not allowed in light industrial.
Right.
So I'm still not sure we're not squabbling over something that is clearly not ever going to happen in my lifetime.
All right. We'll think on it.
Yeah.
So does everyone agree that this is something that we will revisit before we finalize?
Yeah, and leave as it written now.
What's that?
And leave as it's written now.
Yeah, leave as written now, and we'll revisit this. Kind of writing down some specifics that we need to revisit before we finalize. Is that okay with everyone?
I like that because then we can get on GIS and do it.
There any other comments then? So what was the consensus on the rural mixed? Is that another one we need to revisit? Or
I think I was the only one that was against it from what I heard.
I would leave it in there.
I would like to leave it, but I would go with Chris that I would like to somewhat better define and understand how we are going to address split zoning on one lot. And what that looks like, I don't know, and I think it would be good for the public to understand better what they could do.
It's true. That is by not having it in there, it leaves it up to chance that someone, who's not a planning and zoning person, but wouldn't even know that they have it as a tool to use unless they happen to go into the office and Dennis or Tess tells them that that's an option, right? I mean, most people will miss that even as a thing. So.
Other than the people that are trying to skip doing it a different way.
best place that we address split zoning?
Seems like the zoning district chapter, I don't know where exactly, maybe there's section 2 district boundaries, maybe. I don't really know, frankly. I'm not sure. Maybe it's its own section.
Yeah. Well, and then I don't know if just in definitions is the right place either. I know, I think we kind of need to probably sit and maybe make a couple drafts and everyone's idea of what that in the offices of how we would address split zoning. And then once we had a better idea of what that language was, the appropriate place to put it.
I like that idea.
And better yet, let's see if another county's already figured this out and we can copy and paste.
Okay, so I'm going to task everyone out for that we get our own idea, whether it's drafting from a different county or coming up with your own definition of a split zoning. We'll refine that down and decide where we want to put that within the regulations. So moving on to section 2. District boundaries. You want to read this one, Kenny?
Oh, I'd love to.
Okay.
Section 2, district boundaries. The boundaries of the zoning districts are shown on the zoning maps, designated the official zoning map, and detailed zoning maps on file in the county offices. Where uncertainty exists as to the boundary of a detailed zoning map, the following rules shall apply. A. District boundaries following section or partial section lines or the center line of roads or highways shall be construed to follow the center lines or section lines thereof. B. Where further uncertainty exists, the Board of County Commissioners, on the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission, shall determine the exact location of a boundary in question. Section 3, authorized uses. The following uses shall be authorized when enumerated in the applicable zoning district, provided that they conform to the applicable development standards. If development standards are absent for a particular authorized use, the Planning and Zoning Commission and Office shall act in good faith to have such development standards incorporated into this resolution. The Planning and Zoning Commission, along with the planning administrator, may provide reasonable interim development standards. All uses identified as conditional uses are subject to the process set forth in Chapter 6, conditional uses. Any development type or use not specifically enumerated as an authorized use within Section 3, authorized uses is expressly prohibited unless a similar use determination is made pursuant to Section 4, determination of similar uses. A, in a zoning district, 1, mining and mineral extraction. 2, home occupation uses. 3, accessory uses and accessory structures that comply with all applicable development standards, Chapter 3. 4, family divisions of unplatted lands creating lot or lots not less than 2 net acres in size. 5, recreational uses. B, come back down here. In agricultural districts, A1. A, general agricultural uses. B, 1 single-family dwelling per 35 acres, excluding the use of mobile, non-conforming manufactured homes on 80 acres or less. C, 1 ADU per single-family dwelling, rental of an ADU. D, agricultural open space subdivision in accordance with Chapter 3, Development Standards, Section 44 of the Zoning and Development Regulations. E, ARU, used for those employed on the premises and their families, excluding the use of mobile, non-conforming manufactured homes on 80 acres or less. Conditional uses. All conditional uses in A1 must be incidental to an agricultural use. 1, home business. 2, workers' camp. 3, temporary camp. 4, landing strips. 5, transportation parking facilities. Uh, 6, storage of heavy equipment. 7, guest ranch. 8, outfitters. 9, kennels, dog breeders. 10, bed and breakfast. 11, fur farms. Does that gravel pits fall under 11?
No, that's 12. You can't read that very good. It shouldn't be. Yeah, gravel pits should be 12.
12, gravel pits with washing and screening or crushing, including batch plants to produce concrete. 13, special events. 14, would that be golf courses?
Yeah.
Private non-commercial golf courses. Next one, riding arena. Is that 15 would be next one? Commercial greenhouse, nursery, meat processing and slaughter facilities, 2 or more short-term rentals. I'm going to stop there.
Yeah, that's a good place to stop. Okay. So let's start with Section 2, first of all. Is there any comments on Section 2?
I just said the version that I have, I've got the PDF here that Tess sent to us, does not have the same languages in there. Let me make sure I'm looking at the right place. Oh no, never mind. My bad. Never mind. It is.
It's one of the few things we didn't change.
Is there any public comment on regards to Section 2, district boundaries? Okay, we'll move on to Section 3.
In the room?
All right, moving on to section 3. How do we want to break this up?
Well, we just go to where Kenny stopped because all he did was
Okay, was the,
and what are authorized.
And maybe we should take district by district or something.
okay. From the board, comments on this first portion.
I really like where we left the last version. And I like everything that's on there.
I guess I'd say, one of the A1, one of the biggest pieces of feedback that I've heard from the community and some of the commissioners is around it feeling like it's a bit of a catch-all, free-for-all sort of situation. I think, it's not all in this part at all, because a lot of it's about the development standards associated with these things. But I guess I just want to drive home the point that when we, there's a lot of things in our comprehensive plan about preserving agricultural land and agricultural uses. And I think there have been kind of debates come up around applications which say, well, we're using, we want to, these would be my words, I think we want to commercialize this so that, we can keep it A1, but it's really at the sacrifice of agricultural land and uses. And instead of privileging agricultural land and uses, happens to privilege whoever owns that land, which historically I think we would have called ranchers or farmers. And today I think the makeup of who owns these are a bit different. And so I think and the more we commercialize A1, the harder it is for our existing and legacy ranching operations to actually persist, because it puts economic pressure, land values increase, taxes go up. It's harder to justify actually running an agricultural operation because it's harder to do. So I guess, that's one of my big concerns, is just making sure that we're really using A1 as ag, and in support of what it says in the comprehensive plan. So, I think a big part of where that comes up here, like guest ranch, is I think where we got a lot of attention, long discussions in the last round. I'm sure we'll have them again this round. So I guess bed and breakfast could be another one. I don't think we got that deep into it. The only other question I'd have is, like, I guess gravel pits seem to be very much like of an industrial sort of thing. They are in light industrial and heavy industrial. It doesn't necessarily, well, gravel pits, and let's add on batch plants. Batch plants they're grouped together, but those are pretty different operations in a lot of ways. So I guess I would call into question how important it is to have what is really kind of an industrial operation on A1. So sorry, 2 lengthy comments.
Well, to the answer to the gravel pit question, is part of it is everyone's given the right to mine what they have. And if that is gravel, then that's fine. And then the biggest part about the gravel pits being on A1 is the people building the $1 million road projects want to get the gravel as close as they can to the project to keep the $20 million road $20 million and not $100 million. It's a huge logistics thing. I mean, if every truck had to drive an extra, if you didn't have gravel pits in A1, I mean, just the amount of money that the county alone would have to spend to go get rocks to keep your road nice is just be astronomically different.
Are you saying that every zoning district can have a gravel pit?
You can mine and mineral extract.
I know, I see the text. I'm just wondering, is your interpretation of that every zoning district can do a gravel pit? If it is, then why do we have it only in some districts?
I'm going to say most of the people with smaller lots you could never have a gravel pit because of the size you need to actually get gravel. I mean, where, you know, if you only have 5 acres, you don't really have the room to go dig your gravel up and still have your house.
Answering the question I asked you.
Yes.
I think the way it's written now, that someone could come and say that they want to mine their gravel out of anything, and it would be really hard to say no. Unless there's something I'm missing in the regulations.
What about the batch plant? Which is a different operation than a gravel pit.
Well, a lot of that is, you know, the batch plant is added in as those people making asphalt want the asphalt to be as close as to the job site as it can, you know, and then the big thing about that is a lot of those are only temporary. They're not ongoing, continuous things. You know, someone sets it up, they mine their gravel, they put their batch plant, they build their road, they clean it, reclimate it, and they go away.
Which, what do you talk, which word on the?
Under the CUPs.
Number
Talk about
12.
Gravel pits.
It's number 12 on there, Kenny.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so like one that comes to mind immediately for me is paved pit.
Right.
And that's a perfect example. And it's still used for agriculture land. They just have a portion of it that they've dug up, created a gravel pit. H&K and or whoever else has came in, sets up temporary batch plants. And it was for the road that was right there.
Actually, it's the state.
Or is the state? Okay.
It's a
Yeah,
state
sorry.
for
My
tapes.
correction. Yeah. And I think, just as a comment, for your comment on remaining agriculture, Chris, I appreciate and understand where you're coming from, but I also feel like it's coming from a long line of ranching families. It takes everything you possibly can to keep a ranch operating. And there's a lot of years that just cows can't do it. And dang sure hay can't around here, because we're lucky to get one cutting. And so the thing about it is that I think it's super important that we have other opportunities that we can make money using our land other than just for strictly agriculture uses. I think it's very important that we leave those options open, because like I said, you do whatever it takes to keep the ranch operating.
Yeah, I totally appreciate that. And right, I think, you know, like a lot of the things we have to consider, it's hard because I agree. And I mean, that is kind of part of the culture of ranching around here, right? I mean, how many people have 3, 4, 5 jobs, right? I mean, that's just part of the deal. People hustle to make a living, and I definitely want to protect that, I guess. But I do think, you know, the question is, can we do that at the same time as we live up to the comprehensive plan's priorities, which are stated throughout around maintaining agricultural land and agricultural uses? So can we do what you just said without sacrificing that? That's the question, I guess. You know, the way that some of this plays out, you know, there's some historic ways that people have done it that I don't think sacrifice agricultural land and uses. I think it works. I think that, but the trend has, I mean, in the past, I think it was between 2017 and 2022, Sublette County lost 16 to 17% of our agricultural lands. You know, that's a worrying trend if you look at our comprehensive plan and ask, are we doing a good job at fulfilling it? So I think there's some real risks. I think that, you know, the planning and zoning that we look at today is not the same landscape as it was 10 or 20 years ago. I think there's other pressures, that commercialization, that will sacrifice our agricultural land. So that's where I'm looking to draw the line, is where can we respect and support those traditional kind of hustlers that, you know, respect everybody's got to make a living, and but not open the door for commercialization that is actually against what we're trying to do.
Just a question, that percentage, is that loss of ag land due to rezoning or?
You know, I don't know. It comes from a USDA stat where they measure agricultural lands, and it doesn't say what it turned into or why it happened. It just tells you the agricultural land numbers and acreage. I mean, Wyoming has lost 6 million acres in the past decade, I think, of agricultural land, and 18% of agricultural lands in Wyoming have been lost. I'm going to guess largely to rezoning, but I don't know. I'm not sure. It's a guess.
Yeah.
I just want to point out that seeing it first, the county zoned everything A1. They had no idea what they wanted to do. And that those people in 78 gave themselves these rights because they didn't know what they wanted to do. And I don't want to take it away from those people. And the vast majority of them, all of these uses are conditional uses that are still held on a 1-by-1 basis that get to have public comment that usually in the end result is what people wanted. It might take a long time to get there and not the way they wanted to get there, but still the things they didn't want to happen, they've got to stop. And the things that we've supported and no one else objected to has been built.
Are there any other comments right now for the board?
I don't think so.
I think Part D, the ARU, I think that's supposed to be, I think we intended that to be one ARU, right? If that's true, then we should probably say one like we do for single family dwelling in ADU.
Oh, on C.
Sorry, in my copy it's D. In the clean version it's D. ARU, it's the last one before conditional uses.
Oh, I see it.
And then would you mind scrolling down to the rest of the conditional uses? There's a typo in mine. I want to see if it's in here or not. There's the, because riding arena is on the same line as a golf course in mine. Is that true there?
Oh, on that one, it's moved down.
Okay, all right, cool. Thank you.
Your comment about the top.
On E.
Oh, ARU, I think we intend that to be one ARU. And then so similar to how we say one single family and one ADU, I think we should say one ARU.
All right. So with that being said, is there any comments from anyone in the room? From public in the room? Mr. Christensen?
Yes, Steve Christensen. I'd like to comment just on section 3 first off before I get into the A1 zoning changes that have been proposed. And that is up at the top, it talks about developmental standards and it says, hey, look, if there aren't development standards, then the office will provide interim and will work to incorporate those into this resolution. And the resolution is defined as the regulations. I guess if there are not development standards for a particular zone, I would encourage you to go ahead and do that as part of this process. It seems like we're here. Let's go ahead and add those. So that'd be my first comment.
Would you mind restating that? I just want to make sure I understood what you said.
In the very introductory language there in section 3, it talks about, hey, if there's a particular zone and there isn't a developmental standard for that zone, then the planning office will act in good faith to have such development standards incorporated into this resolution. And so, you know, again, if there's a development standard that's not available for a particular zone, you know, and we're going to kick that can down the road, why not just handle it now?
Yeah, thank you for saying that. Just real quick, that the language actually is talking about the authorized uses within zones, not the zones themselves, which might be hard to see up there because of all of the red lines, but I've got it here clean. And so it says standard, if development standards are absent for a particular authorized use, the Planning and Zoning Commission and office shall act in good faith. I think that's the language you're referring to. Am I correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
And I would agree. I think we should definitely, yeah, there shouldn't be a use that doesn't have a development standard. I think that would be good practice. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, and I would agree that we definitely need to
I mean, we're here, so let's work on
it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yes.
I'd like to turn to kind of the changes, the proposed changes in the permitted uses in A1. And I would suggest that there are a lot of restrictions or carve-backs in what is currently permitted in A1. And I'll walk you through some of these, okay? And so we are concerned that, you know, by these changes, there are certain uses, again, that are being taken away that are currently available to A1 zone property owners. And so let's take a look first off at the supplemental language that is added referencing conditional uses, okay? And so here, the proposed additional language says all conditional uses in A1 must be incidental to an agricultural use. Now, this language has the potential of effectively swallowing up and eliminating any conditional use. Because if I come in and I'm applying for a conditional use, I have to first show that my conditional use that I'm applying for is incidental to an existing agricultural use. Okay, so there's two issues in connection with incidental agriculture use. One is a measurement issue. What is an incidental agricultural use? Okay, or what is incidental to an agricultural use is what I should say, right? So it is the amount of revenue that's generated from the property? Is it the amount of time that somebody spent doing that activity? What is an incidental use to an agricultural use? The second question, so there's just how does an applicant come and demonstrate that the conditional use that they're applying for is incidental to an agricultural use? The second issue is what if I own A1 zone property, but all I do is reside there? So I'm not actively using it as an agricultural use. But then I decide I want to have a short-term rental there, or two short-term rentals there, because I have to have a conditional use permit to have two short-term rentals on my A1 property. Do I first have to go and create an agricultural use? So then I can show that my two short-term rentals are incidental to my agricultural use. And then assuming I do get the CUP, do I have to maintain my agricultural use in order to not lose my CUP? So I would propose that we strike that requirement. The conditional use, obtaining a conditional use permit is the process that will have to be brought before this board as well as the Board of County Commissioners. As through that process that concerns or issues can be resolved. And so I would recommend that we strike this language. And so I've got about 4 or 5 other proposals with A1. I don't know if I want to, and I've got a memo that's not in form to be circulated. I'm happy to share this with the board later. I will share this with the board later. But do we want to go through all of my concerns in A1, or do you want to talk about this first?
Is all your concerns on the conditional uses in this page right here, or?
It's on A1. It's on this page, correct?
Yeah, then you want to
Okay.
address them now.
Okay.
Sorry, could I don't want to miss what you have to say, but I need to use the restroom. Could we do a quick bio break and then come back and hear Mr. Christensen's comments? Would that be okay?
That's certainly.
Absolutely.
All right.
Let's take a 5-minute recess break.
Thank you.
Land is being lost because profitability with the cow is going down.
Use of the resource. Has to be stakes for the.
And then also we're allowing. To call. His name was. Useful. Here's the base idea. Okay, Johnny Lewis. That's all.
Those snow machine accidents still hurt?
Yeah. I think it's gonna be forever.
Yeah.
Doesn't help. I've got metal from here to here, holding it all together. So,
Well, it's a lot better than the alternative.
oh, sometimes it would be kind of cool to have a peg. Like, can you imagine? I could like accessorize that. Like, peg, you could have a Blade Runner,
Yeah.
all kinds of fun stuff.
Or step on a piece of slick floor here and just the old stick goes.
Right. Oh, it was probably 6 or 8 months before my accident. You know, Aunt Jenny, used to be Jenny Roberts.
Oh, yeah.
Or no. Her grandson got in a really bad motorcycle wreck. And after he was still dealing with it whenever I got in my wreck. And so we were comparing war wounds and stuff. And he ended up, it was unfortunate. He ended up having his amputated like below they thought they were going to have to amputate it at the hip. And then he started regaining feeling in it and that, and he ended up having to get it amputated just below the knee. But
Oh, that'd be a blessing.
oh, yeah. And that's, I mean, he just fought infection but it was the big joke that we were hoping that we could get a 2-for-1, like both of us just get our leg cut off. And then I went on eBay and found him like a used prosthetic leg. And I was like, check it out. I'm your new leg.
That's tied to the operation. It is tied to the recreational activities. Recreational activity, outdoor recreational activity.
Incidental. Yep.
That was the key.
All right, I will call this meeting back to order. Okay. All right, so Mr. Christensen, would you like to continue on with your comments in regards to A1?
Yes, I would. So that my first concern is, again, the additional language on conditional uses. My second comment goes to kind of, I need to lay some foundation here, and that is that the structures of the regulation, and we've seen this and come across this many times, is such that if the particular permitted use in a zone is not specifically enumerated, then it's prohibited. So you are only limited to engage in those activities in that particular zone, which are specifically enumerated. And so now as we look at the changes that are being proposed, we'll see that C has been stricken out, okay? And let me just read that real quick. Outdoor recreational facilities for hunting, fishing, horseback riding, hiking, biking. Did I miss something? Riding, biking, hiking, ATVs, and winter sports uses incidental to the principal agricultural use. Okay. Now, as I read that, and then we go down to new conditional uses. We've added outfitters, riding arenas, and commercial greenhouse and nurseries. Now, my understanding is, and Dennis can correct me if I'm wrong, but the what was up above and what was stricken out, when it said outdoor recreational facilities, it has been interpreted and implied that the activities associated with the outdoor recreational facilities were permitted as well. In other words, you're not going to have a facility but then say, hey, look, hunting, fishing, horseback riding isn't permitted when you have a facility to promote those activities. Now, here's the problem that I have with that. Currently, A1 folks can engage in hunting, fishing, horseback riding, biking, hiking, ATV, and winter sports, with the only condition that those are incidental to the principal agricultural use. That's the only condition. Now we seem to be moving those to conditional uses, which will require a conditional use permit. And also, there's no provision. My understanding too is that a person owning A1 zone can charge for those activities and receive revenue from those activities, biking, hiking, seeing ATVs. And it appears that the changes in the regulations, while permitting recreational uses, cannot use these as a revenue source on the ranch unless they go through the additional step of, for hunting and fishing, getting an outfitter's CUP. And so my concern is we're taking away existing permitted uses for owners of A1 property with the change of striking out the section above and then putting certain and not, there's no provision in the conditional uses for an ATV course or a motorbiking course on A1 property. So we're taking away all those rights, and then we're subjecting some of them, limited a few of them, to the conditional use process. So that's my second concern. My third concern is the short-term rental issue. And so you'll see that the CUP listed, a new CUP listed is 2 or more short-term rentals, okay? Which means by right, you have only 1 short-term rental property on Ag 1 property. Now this creates a lot of issues, okay? For one, it doesn't distinguish between an A1 parcel of 35 acres versus an A1 parcel of 1,500 acres. Okay, both, if the 1,500 acre has 3 structures that they want to rent out as short-term rentals, they're going to have to come and get a CUP, right? You know, so there's no distinction between a large A1 parcel and a small A1 parcel. You have to come if you have, you know, again, by right, just 1. If you want to have 2, you have to come and get permission. You have to get a CUP. And currently, there is no limit. So this is, again, taking away a right that exists for current A1 zone property owners. And the other, I'm not so certain it's necessary, because A1 zone property, you're permitted to have 1 dwelling unit, and currently the regs say 1 guest house or 1 guest cabin on 35 acres. So there's already a cap or a limited built into short-term rentals on A1 property. It has to do with how many structures or residences can be built on an A1 property. And then finally, my last point on this is the unintended consequences, right, of this rule. And that is, if I'm an owner of 1,500 acres, what am I going to do to have 20 short-term rentals? I'm going to come and subdivide all of my 1,500 acres into 35-acre parcels. And I think this is clearly not what we want to have happen. Right? We want to preserve those large tracts of our agricultural land. So why are we, you know, limiting the short-term rentals with when the way around that is going to be to subdivide the parcels into smaller 35 acres, so I can have by right 1 short-term rental on each one of those parcels. And then my final comment actually goes into the definitions, okay, that are applicable to this section. Let me talk about first, and I don't know if we can hop to section 1 with the definitions and pull up the definition of agricultural use. Chapter 1. Can we pull that up?
Yeah, we can read it. You want me to read it? Chair, would you like me to read it, or?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I'm not. All right, excuse me. The definition of agricultural use is the use of the land to produce livestock, crops, harvest, timber, or graze livestock for commercial purposes consistent with the land's capability to produce, including land used for structures or other site improvements or farmstead structures incidental to such uses that supports the land's production capability.
Okay, my understanding that this definition is coming from the state definition of agricultural uses. And the state uses this definition to determine whether or not a particular parcel is exempt from real property taxes or not. This definition is very restrictive and tight in how it's written. And that's because the state definition is trying to avoid putting, what I'll say is casual agricultural use onto the exempt property tax rolls, okay? So I'm aware of a ranch in Landers that operated as a guest ranch, and but actually sold hay and horses into the community. It applied for a property tax exemption and was denied because of the predominant use for horses and use of its own hay. So the question comes, is this definition of agricultural use is then the permitted use in A1? So do I, in order to qualify as a permitted use in Sublette County as A1, and this is a little nuanced, but does that mean I have to use my property to the maximum agricultural value? In other words, do I have, is only property that receives a real property tax exemption from the state eligible to engage in agricultural uses in Sublette County? Yeah, but again, this is the definition. We're mixing apples and oranges. This is the definition by the state for property tax exemption.
I don't know. That's not where we got that definition. I don't know where you got that information, that we got it from the state, but we deliberated on that a long time.
Okay.
Came up with that independent of anything.
Okay, well, let me focus on the language itself then, okay? It says, the very last clause, that supports the land's production capacity, okay? So my use has to be tied to the production use or capacity of the land. It can't be merely agricultural in nature, right? So what if I'm a hay broker, okay? And I build a barn that stores hay, and the hay is coming from other ranches to my property. I store it on my property, and then I sell it out into the community. I think that's an agricultural use, but it's not increasing the production capacity of my land. So I'm concerned that this definition says it has to be tied to my, even though it's a traditional agricultural based business or use, it has to be tied to the production capacity of my land. Other definitions that we're concerned about, the definition of ADU specifically says that it's housing of a non-paying guest or family members of the owners. Yet in the A1's, A1 permitted uses, it says that you can rent ADUs. So I think we need to clean up the definition, because I guess in certain circumstances, an ADU may be rented. And then on the definition of a guest ranch, it's got some odd language in there. It says, for transient guests sufficient to house at least one family, not exceeding the square footage of an accessory dwelling unit or ADU. An ADU is not, it can be no larger than 1,200 square feet. So my question is, does that mean the guest at a guest ranch can only reside in a structure that's 1,200 square feet or less? So if I've got a 3,000-foot building that I want my guest at a guest ranch to stay at, am I prohibited from letting them stay when it says 1,200 square feet in an ADU? And finally, this is just a request that came up in our meeting last week. The current definition of a guest ranch requires that there be a separate eating facility. And as we discussed last week, none of the current guest ranches that are in operation in Sublette County have a separate dining facility. And so I would request that the language be modified not to require a separate dining facility. So lots of things to think about. Those are my comments on the A1, changes to the A1 zoning descriptions or permitted uses.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else in the room that has any comments or questions? Okay, with that being said, we will move to online questions and comments. Let's start with Lacey Crawl. Are you on, ma'am? Lacey, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, yep, you're good. Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, I'm assuming that we're going to come back to the definitions since we were told that we would discuss chapters 2, 3, and 4 tonight. Is that correct?
Yes, so what we had discussed, ma'am, is as the definitions came up within the chapters that we were discussing, that we could go back and reference them as they came up.
Okay, because I'd like to go back to the definitions at some point, but I'm not prepared to do that right now. But
Okay.
I do have a couple of comments, okay? And concerns and questions. Can you tell me, can the board tell me what the purpose of rezoning is?
Would you state that again? What the purpose of what?
Rezoning is.
Rezoning. Okay, thank you.
If somebody comes in and wants a rezone, what's the purpose of rezoning?
To change the use of the land.
Right, you change the use of the land, okay? So I do have some concerns that we create kind of ambiguity here where what should be rezoning isn't rezoning. Okay, and let me give you an example with the gravel pits, with the conditional use, the gravel pit being one. And Holly, I do understand your concern about ranching operations being able to make a go of it. But this is also my concern about that. It would be possible with a gravel pit and batch plant as a use on agricultural land to move away entirely from ranching and have the sole activity, economic activity on that ranch be the gravel pit and the batch plant, or the major economic activity on that parcel be a gravel pit and a batch plant. So I guess my question is, if I wanted to have a gravel pit and a batch plant, what zoning would I seek for that? If that was my operation, if that was going to be my business, what zoning would I seek for that? Can anybody tell me? Is that light industrial? Is it heavy industrial? What zoning would be appropriate for that operation?
Agricultural.
I called it industrial earlier myself. I don't know if my colleagues would agree with me or not.
Well, it seems to me, I mean, I would be in agreement with Chris. It seems to me it would be an industrial operation. So I'm confused because with allowing for gravel pits and batch plants, you know, I can understand somebody having a gravel pit where they want to mine some gravel to put on their road. I get that. But that's different than having a gravel pit and batch plant operation as a major operation on your ranch. And it seems to me that if we don't have some way of distinguishing that kind of activity from agricultural activity, then we've got a problem with our zoning regulations because they're essentially meaningless. So that's what I would say about that. I also have a comment about the term incidental. I know there's been a lot of controversy, and I remember there being a lot of controversy about incidental when we went through this business, what was it, 2 years ago? Incidental is not a superfluous word here. It's pivotal. Okay? Conditional use has to be incidental to something, or it's not conditional. And so I disagree entirely with taking out incidental. And again, we run into the same kind of problem. If you allow, and we can come to guest ranch at some point, if you allow a guest ranch, it is one thing to have a guest ranch that's incidental to your agricultural undertaking. You need a little bit of extra money. It's something else entirely to have the guest ranch be the major business on that agricultural parcel. And then I'm wondering whether a guest ranch designation, and conditional use is the appropriate avenue for what you want to do there. Again, we go back to zoning. What's the purpose of zoning? The purpose of zoning should be to have some kind of idea of what uses you want for some land. If we create this muddy water with our zoning, then anything goes anywhere. And we essentially have lost the purpose of our zoning regulations, which is in essence to help us have kind of a planned trajectory of development in Sublette County. So I have those concerns. And I thank you for your time. That's all I have for now. But again, at some point, I want to go back to the definitions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Can I make a comment about the gravel pits or ask Dennis a question?
Yes.
Dennis, if you're going to do over 15 acres, that's when you kick into the state thing and then they take over anyways, right?
There is, so on the gravel pits, currently what is somewhat exempt through Wyoming DEQ is 15 acres or less. Their exemptions still require a small mining permit. So they go through that process to get the small mining permit, tell them everything that they're going to do, what processes they're going to have there. And then it leaves it to the county to then impose those conditional uses on that gravel pit or on that gravel operation. We allow mining or excavation of that material, of those minerals. So we have some operation procedures and restrictions on those gravel pits or gravel operations that we oversee. Again, with that, Wyoming DEQ has regulations on the equipment that is operated in those gravel operations. So we work in conjunction with them when they are smaller than 15 acres. And as you stated, if they are 15 acres or larger, then the state of Wyoming DEQ is the agency that oversees all operations within that pit.
And to have a gravel pit that's your only source of income, I think we could all agree it's going to be over 15 acres.
Possibly.
Yeah.
The Fear Pit south of Big Piney has been there for 20, 30 years. At this time, it is mostly reclaimed and they are grazing it again. Gravel is a natural resource. Agricultural operations, you are using the natural resources of the land. Throughout the county, throughout the state, that is where these things are located.
And then the only other comment I'd like to make about gravel pits is it's not something that's just everywhere. The gravel is where the gravel is, and it's usually on ag land close to a riverbed on a bank. So it isn't just we make a district and say this is where we want it to be, because that's not where the gravel is.
No, it's generally where I want to dig a post hole.
Yeah, right. You always seem to find it. Related to this, just going back, I was just looking at like what's Wyoming law actually say about it. We say, my understanding of this whole in any zoning district mining and mineral extraction is allowed because I think the way that it was explained to me a while back was that that's what state law says. What state law actually says is different than that. It says that you can't forbid it outright. It doesn't say you can't forbid it in some zones. It just says you can't across the board forbid it. So it does make me wonder. I mean, just because you kind of said, well, it's allowed in every zone, it made me scratch my head a little bit. It makes me wonder if we should not have that in any zoning district, mining and mineral extraction, and instead just put it where we want it. Because I don't think that would not be out of compliance with state law, as far as I understand. And I do think it puts us in a little bit of a bind if we say it's allowed in any zoning district, but then we say gravel pits are only allowed in some.
There's parts to that. There's the mineral extraction. There's the, which what we're talking about right here is gravel, mining that mineral out of the ground or using it. And the conditional uses that we currently have in place for a gravel pit, which includes crushing, screening, or the making of cement, making of asphalt. So in that aspect, we do have conditional uses and we do get to say where that crushing, screening, asphalt plant is going to be. Mineral extraction under small mining permit is just the removal of the rock, removal of any hard mineral from the property.
Right, but what about zoning districts where we don't allow? I mean, we say up front, we say we can do it in any, but we only allow it in 3. What about a residential district that is big enough? I got 20 acres. I'm going to make a gravel pit.
We allow you to dig the gravel out of that pit and take it someplace else. We do not allow you to set up crushing, screening, or asphalt or concrete plant.
Okay. I guess it's a question for us. I mean, I always thought, oh, that's not even a question because I thought it was just state law. But with my new understanding, I guess it's a question for us as to whether that's actually what we want to do or not. But new finding for me tonight personally. So
I'm just going to go on record saying I support letting people use the things that they own.
I want to go on record and saying I'm not saying the opposite of that. Yeah.
Yeah, so you've read the statute, and I guess I heard it, and I think there's some ambiguity in there. I suspect that maybe there's been interpretations or what that means as far as applicable to Sublette County.
We've got folks online still, right? Excuse me.
Okay, so moving on, Dan, you have questions or comments?
Thank you, Holly Roberts. Yeah, one of the conversations I had with Clayton Milankovich at one time was relative to residential housing on A1, that he said, well, if you made everything incidental to agriculture, you couldn't have a house on A1 property unless you were ranching and that was a primary use. So that being said, in residential housing, single family residential housing being something that doesn't really bother anybody else that I'm aware of, haven't heard that yet. Is it an idea that we should maybe make a allowed use, a primary use on A1 property is the one house on 35 acres? That's a question. And then I have a couple more comments and questions. I don't know if you guys want to address that first.
Thought it was written that way.
What? I'm not clear. I'm understanding what you're saying, Dan. What are you saying? Can you say that
Well,
again, please?
Well, if we make all uses on, if all uses on A1 property are incidental to the agricultural purpose, if somebody is not ranching or farming their property, this is what Clayton Milankovich said, and you wouldn't allow to be have a house on there if you said that. So I'm wondering, to make that clear, should a primary use on A1 property also be, or a permitted use on A1 property be one residential house on 35 acres, a primary residential house? Do you follow that question? Is Clayton in the room? I don't know if he's there or not.
He
Yes,
is.
he is.
I think I'll say what he would say, but Clayton, please speak up. But that's the way it's written. It's the conditional uses that must be incidental to an agricultural use. A1 permitted has general agricultural uses, one single family dwelling per 35 acres, one ADU, rental of an ADU, and an ARU permitted. So those don't have to be incidental to an agricultural use.
Okay, then maybe I misunderstood Clayton when he spoke that time.
If I may on this, Dan, if I recall the conversation, we were actually out in the hall of the library here, and it was about a year and a half ago. We were talking about the idea of whether or not every use in agriculture, in an agricultural zoning district, needed to be of an agricultural nature, and therefore incidental to an agricultural operation. And it was a hypothetical. And yes, if you overlaid in a zoning district, in the agricultural zoning district, that said that everything had to be tied to agriculture, then merely living in that space, unless it was tied to agricultural use, would not be allowed. And I was pointing that out for the simple irony of that potential layer.
Okay, thank you. Next question. I'm still trying to understand gravel pits, and was spoke to for a bit. And is a CUP required for all gravel pits? And are gravel pits allowed to be commercial on A1 if they do have a CUP? And when you speak to a 15-acre parcel or pit, I don't know 15 acres, which one that is. So can I have a commercial gravel pit where I'm digging gravel on my property without a CUP, as long as I'm not screening it, because I have more than 15 acres, or does the pit need to be over 15 acres? I have a couple more questions after that. I don't know if we want to just do these one at a time.
This is Dennis. Commercial operation as removing gravel and hauling it someplace else, yes, that could happen without a conditional use permit. The gravel pit where you have crushing, screening of that material to make different things in order to sell it commercially, that would require a conditional use permit.
Okay. And what about the 15-acre part of that? If it's under 15 acres, or is it the parcel or the pit?
It's the permitting on the pit. So through Wyoming DEQ, you still have to go through their operations for any type of commercial gravel operation. You have to go through Wyoming DEQ. If that pit is smaller than 15 acres, they exempt it from a lot of their pit requirements, their larger pit requirements, and then it is just held to county regulations. If the pit is larger than 15 acres, then it comes into full compliance with all DEQ regulations.
But a CUP is required either way, correct?
For commercial operation, yes, not for private operation.
Okay, thank you. Next question. I don't think that under agricultural greenhouse used to be there, and now that's been added. We see some pretty intrusive lighting along the highway from the property over by the Flying A. I don't know how to identify that property. And I don't see that any place in A1 prior to this revision that a greenhouse was permitted in any place other than with that mixed rural or RM zoning. Is a CUP required for greenhouse prior to this new revision? And if we're going to add that to agricultural, should we not be addressing the lighting issue also? And I'm not sure that's being addressed any place in this regulation, but I don't know where the right place to address that's at.
Ooh, I don't even know how to answer the first part of this question.
What are you calling the first part?
About if greenhouses had to have a CUP before. I don't think so, did they? Clayton's looking that up, Dan.
Okay. And then,
but my question to you,
mhm.
Right, we're all mixed, but A1 is the question, I think, right?
Yeah.
It's not in A1, I can tell you.
We did, I think the conversation, if memory serves, when we had this conversation, we moved it in there. We talked about the idea that a greenhouse was an agricultural operation, and therefore it was allowed essentially by right. But I think the commercial nature of it was the issue, largely because of that. Largely because of the operation that Dan's talking about, I think.
Right.
Because people were coming onto the property for the purposes of purchasing at that space. And so it was becoming a storefront, for lack of a better term. And so then there was a desire to then require it to go through the conditional use process first.
So I know that we haven't addressed any lighting issues on that, and that seems to be a major issue with that. I mean, I'm just driving by there, but I imagine that if I lived next to it, I wouldn't need any exterior lighting on my house.
Yeah, I think we don't have a development standard for it right now in the reg revision. And I think to Mr. Christensen's point, and to your point, it would be wise for us to have a development standard and speak to the lighting factor. That has been a big issue from a lot of folks.
And then a couple. Sorry.
Grow without lights.
No, but you can. I mean, Blake is asking what plants grow without lights. To which I don't know the answer. I'm not a scientist. But I will say. I'll say that
all of them do, but not necessarily with artificial light, Blake.
I've talked to the folks that run the greenhouse, and apparently they said that it's relatively easy for them. In fact, he said a lot of greenhouses have it, like blackout shades that would keep the light from emitting. And he said if the county asked us to do it, we would do it. Now, I'm not speaking for him. This was a conversation, but it sounded to me like it was relatively easy. And if they want to be good neighbors, I think if they were asked to do it, they would do it.
I think though, like we have to be careful because talking about lighting, there again, it's slippery slope because any ranch yard has a ranch light. Anybody that's cabin has big lights out in their cabin barns. So I think that we need to be very careful with restrictions that we put on lighting.
Well, I was speaking specifically to the greenhouse at this point, Holly.
Okay, thanks, Dan.
And then I guess the last one was relative to the more than 2 STRs. The purpose of A1 property is for raising crops or wild livestock. So if we want to have multiple STRs in a property, then we ought to be looking at what the definition of a hotel is or a motel, because we're trying to change how the land is used. And a final comment, not a question, but just a statement. I think I've been to 2 years worth of meetings, and some of the stuff I'm hearing tonight is the work that was done by a great number of people and hours involved in these meetings. We're going to start scratching a lot of that off. Is that seems like we may be heading in that direction. Just a statement. Thank you for listening to me.
Can I ask Dan a question real quick?
Yep, go ahead.
So Dan, I have one question for you. So just your last comment about short-term rentals, I take that as you support it if they're only being more than 2, you need to come and get a CUP?
I don't think there should be more than 2 to any one particular owner on any property, because I think you start morphing it into a hotel. And I think you tear away at the fabric of the community. So Mr. Christensen represents the Jackson Fork Ranch, and I have lost 7 neighbors on my road that I will never get back because they want to turn those into short-term rentals. And Blake and I have had this conversation before. You said that maybe I should talk to my neighbors and encourage them not to sell. And I said, that doesn't seem to be much of an option. It seems to me we had to encourage different investors not to be purchasing them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. All right, we have. I think so. Pat, do you have questions or comments, ma'am?
I do. Thank you for taking my comments, listening to me ramble. Okay, so here's my comment on the current proposal for the for CU or conditional use permits at all. So the comment was made by Mr. Christensen that it appears that they simply want the or that if you buy agricultural land, but you don't want to use it for that, you want to use it for as whatever, some kind of money making thing. And we all know that ranching really isn't a money making process hardly anymore. But nonetheless, the fact of the matter is that investors and people with lots of money want to do the same thing with agricultural land, as the reason that they come into Wyoming and take up residences which they don't actually live in. They only claim it's their residence to get take advantage of the tax structure and the laws in the state of Wyoming for financial things. And that's what they're wanting by, not having an agricultural property to be used as, or not being used for agriculture, but as an events facility, a guest ranch with no ranching, and that kind of thing. It's advantage for the tax structure, because if it's A1 land, it gets to have a agricultural taxing. And so here we are again, we're merely wanting to utilize the zoning to our advantage and then not have it incidental to agricultural use. So I think it has to be any kind of conditional use of agricultural land needs to be incidental to the agricultural use of the land. Thank you. That's
Thank
it.
you, Pat. Thank you. Dan, did you have another question or comment?
Yeah, yes, I do. I just wanted to reiterate that I didn't really focus on that, but I agree with what Pat says, is that it needs to be incidental agricultural use or it needs to be rezoned. That's the purpose of that, and trying to cram everything to an A1 property, which is intrusive to the other people that are relying upon agricultural use or residential use is an infringement on those local people's property rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, seeing as how it is 8:45, we have a couple things, other things that we needed to talk about. We need to clarify the friendly amendment from the last motion. And we also I would like to set the calendar for upcoming meetings. So would you guys like to continue this? Is this a good stopping point?
Yeah, because we'll never get through R in 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So I agree with this is a good stopping point. And, A1 was the biggest thing out of this whole redraft of what to do. And there was a lot of compromise on everyone both ways, I think, when we originally went through it. Where some of the things that people don't like got put in because they were a compromise of the things that the people that wanted to be a lot more restrictive. And so now we're going to have to go back and try to decide what we do and don't want in there, and what the best way for the county to move forward is. So I think it's a good stopping point.
Great. Rest of the commissioners agree?
Sure.
Yep.
Okay, so with that being said, let's discuss upcoming meetings, the special meetings for this. I would like to propose that we consider doing at least one or a couple of meetings in Big Piney. And I don't know if there's the possibility of doing it anywhere else in Bondurant. Daniel, I don't know what the capabilities are as far as, I know we for sure can in Big Piney, but I don't know. But I think it would be a great idea for us to expand out and make it a little more accessible, because I know that these meetings are late, and I would like to encourage as many people as possible that are interested in this to come in. And I think that it would be a good option that we do at least a couple of the meetings elsewhere.
I think other than Big Piney, and that would all be dependent on if Marbleton lets us use the town hall. I think if we're committed to really doing Zoom and having the technology thing, that getting outside of that, I mean, unless someone is really going to come help, that we will be stretched to actually be able to engage the public anywhere else. Because it took me and Tess way more effort than I wanted to put into it today to get this to work over here. And I just wanted everyone to know that Tess did put a lot of effort in today to make this meeting happen over here.
Yeah, And thank you. Yes,
I-
and we do definitely very much appreciate Tuss.
I just looked pretty and waved at the camera. So just.
I would agree with doing Big Piney and Pioneer and Pinedale would be plenty, I think, but we need to get down and involve the other side of the county. If, we don't have a great big crowd here, but we could have the same crowd down there, but I would think Piney and Pinedale would be plenty.
I like that idea.
Okay, so with that being said, looking at the calendar,
I will say that I will be out of town from May 8th until June 11th, and I will be in the Himalayas, so I will not be on Zoom. So I obviously you can't schedule around me, but I will say that I would like to be at as many as I can. So
that's a little bit.
I hate to miss them.
Okay, so today is the 24th.
Can I ask Dennis a question?
Yep.
So our meeting on May 15th, the only thing on the agenda is regs, right? Is what you said last week.
That is correct.
Okay. Which that meeting will be in Pinedale because it's noticed that way.
Correct. So May 15th, find out, and that's just regs. Okay. So what about the 8th? What day did you say you're leaving, Chris? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I'll be gone on the 8th
Okay.
myself.
Or the 1st. The 1st would be next Thursday
Yeah. I just don't know if that's long enough for the public.
right. May 8th. Any thoughts?
Well, if we did it earlier in that week, could you come? Like if we did it on a Tuesday or Wednesday? Or you got a ton of stuff going so you can go on your trip?
I will not be. I wouldn't be able to make it on Tuesday or Wednesday.
we might
I'm
as well.
sorry.
I mean, if we want to have two in May, it would either need to be the 8th or the 22nd so that we're not getting way into Memorial Weekend. And then
Right.
the way graduation is this year, that weekend's already stupid enough.
Yeah.
I'm gone the 22nd.
You're gone or down?
Gone.
Gone. Okay. Well, what is the 8th?
I can do the 8th.
Kenny, can you do the 8th?
Yeah, I think so.
And then, and we could make quite a bit of, that would be 2 whole meetings back to back, week to week, which I think might actually be more productive.
Okay. So we'll schedule one for May 8th. Do we want to try to go to Big Piney on that one or hold off on Big Piney for?
I think we should go to just for logistics and with getting with the town hall and working all of that out with them down there, that we should, whatever meeting we have in June.
Okay.
Because that would give us more time to get it set up and make sure our ducks are in the row.
Yeah.
Because, I know the commissioners Zoom down there, but I don't know if I've never written to a meeting down there. So does Lisa?
Florida County Commissioner meeting?
Yeah. You've been to when they're there. Does Lisa just have her standalone thing there, or?
There's a whole setup there for
Yeah.
like you mean for the video conferencing
Yeah.
stuff? They put a TV over to if you're facing the podium or whatever, that there's a TV over to the right. I don't know if they bring that in just for the meeting or that lives there.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't been.
But everything else seems to be, but I've never seen Lisa there. I have never seen anybody actually setting anything up. So I don't know.
Okay.
Well, if we waited till June 2, that would give me time to make sure that, because I know they do a lot of things.
Yeah, that building's
At the
used a lot.
center there too, so that would just give us a little bit more time. So we'll definitely plan on a meeting in June in Big Piney. So our next meeting will be May 8th. And we'll have to double check location. Hopefully the commissioner's room. And then our regular meeting, May 15th. But both of those will be covering regs. So we will be starting out.
Is our June meeting actually on a national holiday?
What's the?
Oh, it's Juneteenth.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Thursday.
It is Juneteenth. You get off for those days?
Yeah,
Oh.
the county building's still open that
Okay.
day, so.
Again, I'll ask if it's not too much of an inconvenience if we could, because since I'm not back to the 11th, I would love to not miss another meeting if we could possibly, if we're going to do a second meeting, if we could do it the 26th, if that's possible, I would love to do that.
Right.
Yeah,
I like that.
okay.
And then that gives us a long time to.
So June
get set up.
19th will just be a regular meeting. So I will check on, does anybody have any issues with June 26th?
No.
I'll be at the fair, but I can help you.
We're thinking that
Piney,
might
so
be
that'll
Big Piney.
great.
We're thinking that's Big Piney.
June 26th.
Oh, no, that's July, sorry.
I'm all like, Jay's gonna murder you if you tell him you have to have that set up already.
Okay, June 26th, and I will find out about Big Piney.
Didn't even went to the rodeo.
That's getting out about as far as I can
Yeah.
hope to plan here, so.
I agree, definitely. Okay, so our next meeting will be May 8th in Pinedale at 6 o'clock, and I will confirm the location. Right now, we'll say the commissioner's room, but we'll have to double check that.
Can I just ask, and this is annoying because I'm the one missing meetings, but there's several things that we didn't get to tonight in chapter 2 that I will want to, but I'm now going to miss the next meeting, 2 meetings. So I guess just handling that, like, because we will, by the time I get back, we will have gotten past that stuff. So can I either bring it up later? Would you like me to submit those things in writing? I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm wondering what's the best way to handle that.
I would say either.
Case, you can go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think either way, if we're not committing to anything, I mean, you could even do both. I mean, if you
I
had
would
something in
support both.
writing that we could consider while we're discussing it, and then once you're back and are able to either review the recording or anything, you could follow up.
I'd love to be able to represent it, but
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Sounds great.
You doubt me represent. If you write it, I will read it with all of your passion. I promise.
I would love to see that.
Okay, so is there anything else that we need to discuss in regards to the regulations tonight and moving forward?
No.
Okay, so we do need to take care of some quick old business. I don't know why I'm echoing so bad. With our last CUP application, we had made a friendly amendment. Oh. Oh, okay. Well, super. Okay.
That'll be after the commissioners hear the thing. So Tess is in a position where she needs to write the motion to get in front of the commissioners and has asked us to clarify the language.
You are outside the scope of your special meeting. And so, but it is being recorded. It does sound like it's somewhat of a necessity. I guess go for it.
I think it's non-controversial, but I'm always surprised when I think that.
Well, I mean, it's either we talk about it here or we just go and talk about it in email.
Yeah.
It's probably better that you do it on the record then.
Yeah.
We just said that the recording wasn't quite clear, so we just needed to clarify the verbiage.
Oh, okay. That's probably fine.
Okay.
Sorry, my spidey senses.
No, that's fair.
Whoop.
That's fair.
And I did not get to go back and listen to it yet, but I do think I understood what we were talking about.
Right. So that were you going to present it or?
No, go ahead. Sorry, I was trying to pull up.
So I think the question was related to, there was the friendly amendment language clarification was about whether guests, or clarifying that guests be the 100 guests, event guests, we called it, be include both overnight and non-overnight guests. And in fact, in the meeting, Clayton, you spoke up and just said inclusive of the 34 mentioned as overnight guests. So, and it was related to condition number 6, which was about how many event guests. There was an odd phrasing that was in there around like including setup and teardown, which I remembered having to do with a different condition, but Tess clarified we actually did say that, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. The 100 guests including setup and teardown seems, I mean, I think it works, but it just not what I remembered as being that part. So anyway,
What I had, oh, you go ahead.
Which I just thought the setup and tear down was with the 72-hour.
Right, that's what I
condition.
remembered.
And so I don't know if it just got
That
mangled up a little bit.
that was what I thought I'd clarified that when we were discussing stuff, and if I don't know how I said it in the motion, but it was totally intended to include 100 guests, paying guests, exclude the staff setting up and anybody involved in the setup or tearing down.
I could see how that came out
right.
wrong wordage.
So I think just to clarify what I think we meant to say, I think we meant 2 separate statements. One, that there would be a maximum of 100 guests, event guests, whether overnight or not. And 2, events would go no longer than 72 hours, including setup and teardown. I think those are the 2 statements we talked about making.
Yes, correct. Which I think that's more or less the way we want to say them, right?
Yes.
Should we ask Mr. Christensen do you agree with that? That's what was that your takeaway as well? It was, okay.
Oh, I don't think we could make it into a motion because we're not.
Right, but maybe Ted, we can just clarify with Tess now that we've talked about it.
So we're all in agreement, that the 4 of us, that's what we were trying to say, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Sweet. Will you send that awesome language to Tess?
Sure, yeah, I'll write that.
I like the way you said it right there.
Okay.
You good with all that, Clayton? All right.
Is there, I guess, Pat, did you have another comment before we leave?
No. Pat, if you're talking,
No.
we cannot hear you.
No, I didn't.
Go ahead.
I don't. I didn't.
Okay,
I don't.
super. Yeah, you just had your hand raised, so I was just double checking. Thank you.
I don't-
Joe, did you have a final comment for us?
I had one question, probably for Dennis. And it's what are the requirements to maintain your A1 tax class, and how or what is verified to confirm that? And is it done on some sort of regular frequency? Just a informational question for me. And I can follow up with Dennis if I need to. I was curious about that because I think there's quite a bit of A1 that doesn't have an agricultural use that is probably still has the A1 tax class.
Dennis, do you have a microphone? Oh,
I do. That is actually a question for the assessor's office. I do know they have agricultural forms that I think are required to be filled out every 6 years or every year. Oh, it's an every year there.
Every 2 years, it's an affidavit.
Yeah. So there's requirements that the assessor's office has for tax purposes.
And it's separate and apart from zoning land use purposes. So those are not, a lot of people think those are the same. They're not.
Correct.
Yep, that's why I was asking. Thank you.
Okay, is there any other public comment from the board before we leave?
I would just like to thank everyone that came and participated, and call all your friends and try to get more people to come and participate so we get a better gauge on Sublette County.
I would concur with that very much so. We very much appreciate, we know this is a lot of time that you take to come in and participate, and it's very important to all of us. So thank you all for coming and being here with us this evening. And like I said, encourage as many as you can. And I would personally like to thank everyone also for being patient with me as the new chair. It is something that I'm excited about, but I am new and I kind of bumble my way through it. So thank you for being patient with me, but thank you all very much.
I would like to quickly thank everyone that we've got quite a few more letters and comments on the emails in the last couple of days, and I appreciate that very much. And they were read.
Yes, absolutely.
That's all.
All right, with that being said, I adjourn this meeting at 9:02. Everyone have a wonderful and safe night.